My friends, today we are going to be on the subject of impulse responses. Now, I'm sure that you've heard of impulse responses in the forums or you've used them in your productions, but today I finally want to show you guys how important it can be in your mixes to have a good impulse response versus a bad impulse response. Throughout my audio career, I have seen hundreds, thousands of these things pop up, some of them decent, some of them work in certain scenarios, but when you find some good impulse responses that you can rely on, it definitely can change your workflow and make it easier. But at the same time, using bad impulse responses can slow down your workflow and where you grow as an engineer as a whole. Dude, why do you keep smiling when you say bad impulse response? Get out of here. By the end of this video, you will finally know the difference between the two. So what's happening, fam? Miami here with JST, and I've been guilty of using bad impulse responses all the time. It did not really help my growth, but when you find some good ones, you really want to stick to them. Recently, Joel Wanasek just released the ANVIL IR pack through JST, and I have to say that I'm extremely impressed. It seems like it's a really Joel kind of week here. We just did Joel Wanasek bus glue versus JST bus glue. Joel's looks like a club, and Joey's looks like it's in a sub. On that subject, make sure you hit that subscribe button. Trying to hit the goal of 50,000 of you wonderful people by the end of the year. Leave a like if you enjoy the content, and of course, comment if you have any questions or thoughts about the video. So yes, we will be using ANVIL as we go through the good impulse responses, and I want you guys to let me know what you think at the end. Here's an example of a good impulse response. Here's an example of a bad impulse response. So my first example of a bad impulse response is one that you haven't even heard yet, and I'm talking about the naming schemes. Now, a lot of these impulse response companies like to make naming schemes that go for the real world engineer, but a lot of you watching this, I'm sure, are in the box and might not have ever mic'd up a cab before. So when you see API, SM57 plus MD421, dust cone, off axis, all that stuff, it doesn't really mean anything to you. There's certain terms that mean something to all of us, like bright, somebody that mics cabs might think on axis, like there's certain terms that are gonna relate to both of us. And that's one thing that I thought was pretty cool about this pack, in that ANVIL pack. Like in here I go balanced. I get what that kind of means. Crunchy mids. That's what I used for it. Like that's what I was looking for. And an example of like one that doesn't do that, I hate to throw shade. I'm going at Rosen Digital. And Rob Rosen's actually my landlord, so he'll either find this hilarious or he'll kick me out. We'll see. But yeah, I'm familiar with a Sir 2x12. I know how that sounds. So let's open it up. We want the wave to load the impulse. What is that? Sir 1, Sir 2, Sir 3. That doesn't explain to me what I'm looking for. You know what I mean? And I wanted that crunchy rhythm that I got here. And but I'm not gonna slight. Let me take a listen to what this other one sounds like here, because let's load this up. Sir 1, Now, that wasn't necessarily what I was looking for in this song, and how would I have known any better just by the naming scheme? So that's one thing that slows down your workflow when you're working with impulse responses. Sorry, Rob. Here's another example of a good impulse response. Another example of a bad impulse response. Okay, so the second example of a bad impulse response is one that simply does not reach the goal or the purpose of the song that you're doing. Typically, when you're tracking or even when you're sent stems, there's a vibe that kind of goes with the track, right? Like in that last example, I was going for really raw rock. It wasn't like overly edited, and I wanted something balanced that covered the entire spectrum. Right? I didn't want anything that was too bitey, anything that was too scooped. Like let's listen to this and see what I had one more time. So, do you see how when we got to the things that were more balanced, how overall it filled up the whole spectrum and it had that kind of rock tone that I was looking for? That's one of those things. And it kind of leads to a bigger question, right? Like, is there only one good impulse response for a song and the rest of them are bad? Or is it more like there's a family of them that you should stay in? And the way that I think about this is, you kind of need to find what the intention is and the purpose of the IR you're selecting is, and you need to know that before you even reach for it. So when you listen to it, you can kind of get the idea of whether you're going to keep that or still search in that same family. So yeah, the bad version of an impulse response is one that does not fulfill its purpose or goal on the track. Now, here is our final example of a great impulse response. And here's our last bad impulse response. And my last example of what I consider a bad impulse response, we're actually gonna pull up an impulse response that I think does not work in every scenario. No, I'm not telling you the name of what it is. I changed the name of it because I don't want anybody coming at me. But it's I'm gonna call this questionable IR. It works on certain sources, but it doesn't work on everything. Before, I said that you want to have an IR that hits the goal of what you're looking for. But sometimes it's nice to also have an IR that you can rely on basically at any time that you can just pull up, right? Like it doesn't have to be situational. You kind of know like, okay, this will work whether I'm doing it on clean guitars, whether I'm doing it on rhythms or chugs. And this IR I'm about to show you now, like you'll hear it, but on chugs, for example, I think it works. But then you start playing it on other parts and it just doesn't do the same thing. So let's check that out. All right, now let's listen to it here. So did you notice how shrill that started to get when it was not doing anything that was chuggy? The high end was a little bit ear piercing. And now we're gonna go to another part. We're gonna take the last example, the clean part, and we're gonna drop that into the same distorted channel now. Let's listen to that and see how it sounds. Once again, not doing it right, because what this IR is doing really well is it's handling chugs well. And if that's all you're doing for a song, then that's great. And that's an example of a bad IR from someone that I will not name. All right, so now let's check an IR that will kind of work in all three of these scenarios, from a part that was originally played clean and now gets dropped into a distorted channel, from these chugs to the strummed out chords. Let's listen to this one. okay? I could have made that IR work in any one of those scenarios. So it's good to have one that you can fall back on in case of emergency. I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and I think by now you kind of understand how powerful these impulses were, just using them without a mix and playing them straight. There was no processing on them at all. Instead of going through thousands of impulses with names that you can't even understand, API R37, SM57, CAB 7D, before dealing with any of that, just get something that has a few impulses you can go back and forth to without questioning too much, because that analysis paralysis is gonna do nothing but destroy your creativity. If I inspired you to write something, hit the like button. Don't forget to subscribe. You only have to do it one time, and tap that bell for notification so when a video drops, you know the location. Until next time, I am out of here. Mic drop. Except as engineers we know, I wouldn't really drop, well, I actually wouldn't care if I dropped this thing. It was like 15 bucks. Make sure to check this out in my video, $15 mic versus $3,000 mic, and I'll catch you guys later.